everyone and welcome back to my home. In today's video we're going to be doing a full tour of my kitchen and I'm going to share some design tips, some styling ideas and also some mistakes to avoid when you're designing your own kitchen. So come and follow me and I'll show you around. Today I'm cooking minestrone soup. My husband's going to laugh when he watches this because I will not pretend to be the most frequent chef. I basically make lunch for Ollie, who's the cinematographer, more than I do my husband. But this is minestrone soup and I make it about once a week, so you're in for a treat today. And then after lunch, I'm going to give you a little video tour around our kitchen. It's the biggest room in our house. And I just always had this dream of having a kitchen that was like a live-in family room with French doors opening up onto a garden. So it's my dream space to live in. I feel so lucky that I get to live here. A lot of times I get asked about what worktops I recommend, and I think it's such a personal choice. In here, this is a quartz worktop, which in my experience is the most hard-wearing of all worktops. It has got a couple of nicks where you can see we've banged saucepans into it, but this kitchen's nearly 10 years old and there isn't a single stain on it. But there is no substitute for marble. I do think marble's beautiful and I've done an absolutely stunning kitchen. About 10 years ago when I was designing my own home, I did a project in Chelsea and it was inspired by the Tom Ford shops, and we did a really beautiful Arabescato marble. And I actually touched base with her last week and asked her how it's going. And she said it's absolutely fine. And I think it's all about managing those expectations. So if you're prepared to do maintenance, maybe have it professionally cleaned once every year or once every 18 months, and you're going to be careful, it's fine. But if you're the kind of person that's got, messy teenage kids that are going to leave stuff on the surface, quartz is a really good option, or neolith as well, which I've used in quite a few of our projects, is a great option. On the subject of marble, if you're scared to use marble as your worktop but you'd really love to have it in your kitchen, a great place to put it is your splashback. And I've done lots of gorgeous kitchens over the years where the worktop has been a white quartz or an off-white quartz, and then we've gone for a beautiful Calacatta Oro or Arabescato marble. So that's a really good way to introduce another material and add some luxury. And if you've got an existing kitchen and you don't want to spend money to rip out the whole thing, or you feel like you can work with it, that's another way you can really upgrade your kitchen, is maybe change just the splashback. And we've also done that in a lot of show home properties where the cabinets were okay, but it maybe just had like a plain glass splashback. By putting some marble in there, it really elevates it. Another thing that people always have a debate about is where do you put the sink versus the hob if you have an island. I personally always prefer to do a hob on the island, and that's my own personal preference, but I also encourage clients to do that. And there's a couple of reasons why. Firstly, I think it's a much more sociable activity, cooking rather than washing up. So if you've got guests and they're sat at the bar stools, it's quite nice that you can cook and chat to them while they're sat down. And then the second reason is I feel like when you are entertaining or even just cooking for your family, the sink area is kind of like where you move all the dirty dishes, all the saucepans and everything, and you kind of stack it there. And it's nice to have that tucked a little bit out of the way rather than in the middle of the room. So I always think hob on the island and then sink on behind you. And then I've done a ceiling extractor, which is another thing that people ask me about all the time. There are lots of different options like pop-up extractors. I'm not an expert. I think there's people that are more expert in that you should consult. But there is a new product that I'm quite excited about, which is a ceiling extractor, and I can't remember the brand, but it's white. And I think that just makes so much sense. I don't know why they've always made them stainless steel, because they stand out like a sore thumb in a white ceiling. So in my next kitchen, I would definitely get a white ceiling extractor. I also love to mix materials in the kitchen. So whilst most of the cupboards are a dark stained grey oak, I wanted to have a statement finish on these cupboards here. And this is a liquid metal finish, and it was by Anchor, who are based in London. And it's just so beautiful. I think it's one of those finishes that ages really well and it actually looks better over time. And it's also very practical because this is where I keep all my oils. So previously, before I changed this up, I had the grey oak cabinets here as well, and every time I grabbed the olive oil, when I put it back, I'd end up with loads of like sticky fingerprint marks, whereas this one hides all your dirt, so it's very practical. Okay, for a sink, I'm not going to talk about this for too long because it's quite boring, but there's 2 things to know about a sink. Always get one of these extendable taps so you can clean out the sink. It's life-changing. And I don't have a kettle anymore, I just have a quicker tap, which is also life-changing. You get instant boiling water, really good, and just saves you so much time. The only other thing I would have done differently if I was to redesign this space is I've got 2 equally sized sinks. I probably would have gone for a smaller sink where you do your food waste disposal, and then a bigger sink which is better for washing up pans. So when it comes to styling your kitchen, there's lots of different ways to go about it, but I prefer to keep my entire island completely clear. And the reason I've done that is because this is such a large open plan space. When you're designing large open plan spaces, they can very quickly start to look cluttered. And I felt like my one was beginning to look cluttered. So by having this big clean space in the middle of the room, it just makes it feel a lot more organized and less cluttered. So I keep this clear, and it's also good because I do a lot of food prep here. And then I like to have lots of herbs in the kitchen. This is some rosemary and a lovely little woven wicker basket. And then here, this is one of the mistakes that I made in my kitchen, and it's one of those things that I could really kick myself about. But when you're building a house or renovating a house, there's thousands of decisions you have to make at the same time. And I remember the electrician saying to me, do I want to have a telephone point here? And this was 10 years ago, so that was when we actually used to use landlines. And I said yes, and of course I've never used it, and it looks hideous, so I had to get a disc to hide that out of view, because I can't stand seeing lots of sockets on your splashback, especially when you've got a beautiful marble or a nice mirror. It looks really messy. And then I've also used this book to hide some plugs here. And I don't regret having 2 sets of plugs, but I think you could probably do with just one double socket, because it's very unusual that you need to use multiple sockets. I would say 2 would be enough. So if I was to redesign this kitchen, I would probably get rid of either this one, or on this side over here, I have another one, and you'll see I've also hidden that one out of view. And this is something that people ask me a lot about on Instagram, is where are your plug sockets? Well, we either Photoshop them out in post-production, or we hide them with accessories. So here I've got a tall white vase. This is a lovely little pot I picked up at Dalesford last week, really gorgeous. And this has got some thyme in it. And I love having herbs in the kitchen because I think they look beautiful, they smell great, but they're also really handy for cooking. And then I've got a pot of sage, which is also great. I've put some of that in the soup. And this is just a little wooden pot that I think I got from Marks and Spencer's a few years ago. And I think that works really nicely as a little trio. You've got lots of different textures and all the colours work together. So when it comes to styling, I would say pick items that are related to a kitchen, related to a cooking, so they feel appropriate. And don't overdress your kitchen. Make sure that whilst you have some nice objects to add, a touch of personality, make sure you keep some space free as well so it doesn't look too cluttered. So let's talk about organisation. This was a little mini project that I did last year. We've always kept all of our sauces and oils and vinegars in this cupboard, and it was just a disaster. I could never find anything, and I kept buying the same olive oil over and over again. So I got this little stacking system just off Amazon, and what's great about it is it just elevates each step so you can see all the different spices you have. And then I've also gone label crazy, which really helps sort of organise your cupboards when you don't have segregated sections. So I've got my olive oils, apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and everything is visible all at once, and it just really helps you when you're cooking to grab what you need quickly. Something that I've been asked a lot about as well is where do I put all my appliances that I maybe don't use all the time. So that is in these drawers. I've got my milk frother, toaster, Vitamix, Nutri-Ninja, all those kind of ugly things that you don't want to have out on the worktop. Find a drawer or a cupboard. I've done drawers because I feel like they're easier to access. but try not to have your toaster and those kind of appliances on show because it always looks messy. In an ideal world, and I designed this kitchen 10 years ago and things have certainly moved on, there's things that I would do differently now, and one of those things is I would love to have a breakfast pantry cupboard. I do them in all my clients' kitchens and they're brilliant. You have your toaster, coffee machine, some people have a smoothie maker, they might have a freezer drawer for some berries, whatever it is that you like to make in the morning. It's great to have a dedicated cupboard where you can do all of that and it's separate from the other area of the kitchen. And then if you're in a rush in the morning, you can just close the doors and clean it later. For the appliances in our kitchen, I chose Gaggenau and I'm really happy with them. They're great to work with. This is a food warming drawer and I've done two just so that it's symmetrical on both sides, but you really only need one. I think that's something definitely worth having so that you can warm your plates before you serve your food. And this is an oven microwave combi, which is a really useful thing to have. And then this is just a normal oven. Next to that, I've got our freezer. And I wish I had space for a bigger freezer. Actually, I've got a second freezer in our garage. But I also labelled all the drawers for the freezer, and my husband thought I was crazy, but it saves so much time, and actually all the labels stick on. I thought they might slide off, but it just means that when you're looking for it, you don't need to like jumble through loads and loads of stuff, and then the freezer starts beeping at you and it's all stressful. Oh, there we go, beeping at me. On the island, I've made the whole unit all drawers because I think drawers are a lot more efficient when it comes to storage. So the top drawer is just for tea towels. Then I've got this little drawer and that's for the kids' items. And the reason I did that was because they love playing with the drawers in the kitchen for some reason. So here I can let them play with all these items. They're all plastic and I don't need to worry about them smashing plates. And then I've got my cooking utensil drawer here. I'm not going to show you inside because it's not perfectly organised and tidy. And then I have my cutlery drawer here. And I would say one of the things that I've learned more living in a kitchen rather than designing kitchens is you learn so much as a designer when you live in your own home and how things function. And everyone always puts the cutlery drawer near the hob. And I guess it makes sense to have it near the dishwasher, but my husband and I drive each other nuts and one of us is cooking and the other one wants to lay the table. So from now on, when I'm designing kitchens, I'm gonna put the cutlery drawer further away from the hob and closer to the table so it's easier for laying. And that does have the downside that it's a little bit further from the dishwasher, but I feel like when you're cooking and someone's trying to move you out the way so they can open the drawer, it's super annoying. Another thing people always debate about is what kind of hob to go for. I personally prefer a ceramic hob. Because I'm not a professional chef, I'd rather have something that's easier to clean than, maybe with a gas you can get more heat. But I think if you're gonna have your hob on the island, go for ceramic. It's much more easy to maintain, and I think it also feels a bit more appropriate when you're sat there. You don't have these ugly gas hobs in front of you. I want to just really briefly talk about lighting in kitchen designs. I feel like it could be its whole own video, but this little area is quite a good example of how to do different levels of lighting in your kitchen. So first of all, I've got the task lighting, which is an LED strip, and that runs all the way under these cupboards, and it's hidden by these slightly lower cupboard doors, so you never get that ugly reflection. Then I've also got some spotlights, and these are more decorative, and I had those so that they would highlight the texture of the cabinets. And then lastly, if you pan up, you'll see there's an LED strip above the cabinets, and that throws light onto the ceiling. And I've done that, well, I designed that with John Cullen so that it would make the ceilings feel higher, and it gives a really nice sort of ambience lighting. So if you have in your kitchen, if your cupboards don't go all the way to the ceiling, definitely consider putting a lighting LED strip along the top of those cupboards because it will look so beautiful, and it will make your ceilings feel a bit taller as well. And the last part of the kitchen that I wanted to share with you was just this wall behind me. We're going to be moving on to the dining room next, but we've got two wine fridges from Gaggenau in the middle, and then I've got that flanked on either side with just food storage. So this is one big food pantry, and the same on the other side. And if you're designing your own kitchen, try and keep all your food storage areas together so that it's all easily accessible and you know where everything is. And of course, I've gone label crazy in there. Every single shelf and drawer is labeled. So I'll just show you an example of one of the cupboards, how we store the food. Again, I've gone for drawers. I feel like drawers are much more useful than just shelves in terms of accessing everything. And then I've got these little compartments that I bought from Amazon to segregate into different sections. So we've got the rice, pasta, oh, and more rice. We love a bit of carbs in this household. And then I've labelled that at the front as well, so it's really obvious. And then just to explain this little art gallery, for any parents out there, you know that dilemma you've got when your kid brings home some art from school or nursery and they're super proud of it and they're like, where can we hang it up? And you don't want to ruin your kitchen, or you don't want to like have it on display, but you want to make them feel good about themselves. I was told about this by my sister, where she makes art galleries on the inside of the cupboard. So you do sacrifice a little bit of your cupboard, lots of sellotape on here, but Ava loves showing all her friends and family her art gallery when they come round, and it means that we can look at it and then we can put it away. The biggest mistake I've made in my house happens to be in the kitchen, and it's my biggest design mistake, and I wish I hadn't chosen it, and it's this floor. It's a large format porcelain tile, which is great, and I do like how it looks, but the problem with this tile is it has teeny tiny holes that over time, as you drop items on it or people walk across it, fill up with dirt. And what happens is, across a big space like this, is areas that are less busy stay nice and white and light, and then the food prep area, where naturally you're spilling more items on it, gets a lot darker. So my advice to you is, whatever floor you're thinking of in your kitchen, get a large sample and do some of your own testing, you know, spill things on it, pour things on it, and just see how easy it is to clean, because this floor is an absolute nightmare and I wish I hadn't chosen it. So now we're in the dining area, and because it's open plan, I wanted it to work with the rest of the kitchen and feel like a continuation of that space, but still have its own identity. And how I went about that was, I had a table made in exactly the same finish as the cupboards that I've got in the kitchen. This one was made by the same manufacturer that made the kitchen, so we could make sure the finishes were an exact match. And then, so that it didn't feel too matchy-matchy, I've gone for a different colour on the dining chairs. These are made with a much warmer oak, and again, they were custom made. Sorry guys, I know you hate it when I say that. And I've upholstered them, oh look, a little bit of dirt. I've upholstered them in a real leather, and that is so great if you've got kids, either real leather or faux leather, whatever you prefer, because there's no stress. When your kids spill every single meal of their life on the chair, you don't need to stress out. And then at the end of the table, I've gone for a completely different style of seating again. This was a kind of an experiment that I wanted to do in my own home. And I wanted to have something that looked and felt like an armchair, but could also work as a dining chair. So these were custom made, because if you went for a normal armchair, the seat height would be too low to work with your dining table. Whenever you're picking seating and tables, make sure you always have 20 centimetres between the top of the seat height and the bottom of the table, so that it feels comfortable and you don't feel squished in. But I love these. I feel like they work so well in terms of making it a more inviting space. Whenever we have guests here, they always fight over these chairs and everyone gets drawn to this area. So I'm really happy with how it works. And I've put these at an angle. Again, it feels like a bit more casual, but also because they are that little bit heavier, it means that you can just sit down without having to pull the chair out, and it just feels a bit more inviting. Chandeliers in this dining area, I went for something very rustic, and the reason I did that was I wanted it to have an indoor-outdoor vibe. We've got all these doors that open onto the garden, and I kind of wanted to blur those edges between the furniture that I have outside and the items I have on the inside. So I really love these, and I love how the colour works really well with the slightly warmer tones in the rest of the furniture. But this is a trade-only supplier, so unfortunately I can't tell you where it's from. And also, in terms of the quality of them when I first got them, I had to have them refinished slightly because they were a little bit too raw, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend them. They're certainly not something that I would use in a client's project. And then this one's for the mums or the parents out there. If you've got a kid and you want to find a good high chair, I bought this one from Stocker years ago and it's been brilliant. Both kids have gone in it. And the reason I chose this one is the finish works really well with my kitchen, so I feel like it's always on display here, but it doesn't look too bad. And it's also really easy to clean. This tray comes off, and really safe and stable for the children as well. So the Stocker one, I totally swear by it. I think it's brilliant. Bar stools are a really important piece of furniture for your kitchen. We always try and go as oversized as you possibly can. There's nothing worse than a skinny small, uncomfortable bar stool. So I love ones that have got backs. These ones have also got arms. We spend a lot of time sitting here, and I've upholstered these in a real leather, which I really love because I think it just looks better the more worn and beaten up it gets. These are custom made, and pretty much anytime you see a kitchen with a bar stool that's been designed by us, it's going to be custom made. And basically that's because we want to maximize the size that we can fit. We want to be mindful of the gap between the bottom of the worktop and the top of the chair. And also, if I'm completely honest, I've never found any good bar stools on the high street ready-made, so we always tend to go bespoke. It's well known that kitchens can be really expensive, and I think it's important to touch on budgets. So when you're budgeting for your renovation, if you're refurbishing your own home, I would say make sure you set aside a really good proportion of your budget for your kitchen. And the reason for that is because not only is it the heart of your home and you're going to enjoy it while you're living there, but when it comes to real estate, your return on your investment and the value of your property, the kitchen really is one of the rooms that sells your house. So you're really going to make sure that you get a good return on the money that you invest in your home if you go for the best quality that you can afford. In an open plan space, you really want to zone the areas. So this behind me is the living area, and I've zoned that by using an oversized rug, which all the furniture sits on. This one's from Crucial Trading, and it's one of their wall rugs, and I absolutely love it. It's really soft, and it's got that rustic feel that I love. And then I've separated it visually using this console table, which is an antique, and these two horse sculptures. It kind of creates a separation between the living area and the kitchen while still allowing you to see through. And then in terms of transitioning from built-in joinery in the more kitcheny areas into a more sort of sitting area, I've also carefully chosen a few pieces of furniture that work with both of the colour palettes. So this is an antique oak bureau that I bought a few years ago from Holland. It's where I store all my stationery, my gift wrapping, paper, all of that kind of stuff. It's an absolute mess inside, so I'm not going to show you. And then I've got this beautiful Fenella Realms piece of art above. Because this is a family home and I just wanted to keep it as comfortable as possible, I went for an L-shaped sofa, and I think that works so well because it gives you lots and lots of seating, but it also again helps zone the area from the kitchen because it creates a kind of barrier. This one I've had upholstered in a really dark aubergine coloured fabric, which I do think has been really practical because we've had dogs jump on it with muddy paws, the kids, and I just don't have to worry about it. And then in terms of styling it, I've dressed it with some lighter colour cushions to marry it in with the rest of the more neutral colour palette that I've got in this room. When it came to picking a coffee table for this space, because it's a bit more informal and relaxed, I decided to go for an upholstered ottoman rather than a coffee table. And I'm really happy with that choice because especially now we've got children, you don't have to worry about any sharp edges, and it's really nice in terms of using it as a footstool but also as a coffee table, and because it's wipe clean, it's really practical. So to balance out the L shape on the other side of this room, I've gone for this really sculptural armchair. This one I sourced from Julian Chichester quite a few years ago, and then I just had it re-upholstered in a neutral colour. I think it was like neon pink before, which isn't really my colour palette. And then this cushion on top, this is a De La Cogne fabric, one of my favourite fabric houses. And then I've added a brush fringe on that. This is a custom made cushion, but we do have quite similar ones from our Andrew Martin collection. This is one of my favourite pieces of furniture, and I had it made in the UK by one of our fabricators. It's a Calacata Oro top in a honed finish, and then it has this metalwork base, which I really love. And it's just really simple, and then I've dressed that with this lamp from Porta Romana. And then because this table has got such a beautiful top, I didn't want to cover too much of it, but I have placed a couple of books. This is just a little leather book, and this is one of the pieces of art by Rachel Dean. I hope I'm saying her name right. This is some sage leaves, which I love, because again, I use sage a lot in cooking. A small succulent. These ones I just bought last week. This one is from Dalesford. Love it. It kind of reminds me of like one of those milk urns. And this is a little plant pot with a saucer, which is really great. And I've put some rosemary in that. When I was designing this elevation where we were going to put the TV, I knew I didn't want to have lots of heavy joinery because there's already a lot of dark joinery in the kitchen. So I decided to create this faux chimney breast. This is just stud work. And then this has been wallpapered in a grass cloth wallpaper. And I went for a slightly darker colour so that it balances all the colours in the room. And then to make it feel like it was part of the existing building, we've wrapped the cornice around that. And then below that, I've done some low-level joinery storage. So these are all drawers, just for like storing all that rubbish that you never quite manage to throw out. And there's got some kids' stuff in there as well. And then I've done some floating shelves, and I've staggered those rather than having them go the whole way across. And that's quite good because, not that I've got it here, but if you've got like this item, if you've got some taller objects that you want to display, you've got enough space to be able to do that. Calocephalus, quite a mouthful. These you can literally buy in a garden centre, and they look exactly the same when they're alive, but they dry beautifully. The only thing to be aware of is they become quite fragile, so they can drop little bits off. But I think they look really, really nice. This is 3 of them squished in this little basket, and I've just put them here to hide the power sockets behind. My pet hate. So I think that's a really good way of creating an affordable plant display. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I've absolutely loved showing you around our kitchen. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.